welcome back to the Masters of the Universe Classic Director's Commentaries, spoken by me, Scott ToyGuru Neitlich, the brand manager for the bulk of the line. And today we are taking a quick break from the monthly releases to talk about one of the only retail releases, namely the DC versus Masters of the Universe 2-packs. And to look at these 2-packs, it's obviously important to look at why they were done, both creatively, financially, and lovingly, I guess you could say. And the origin came from the crossover comics from the 80s, where Superman and He-Man met up. And from that concept was sort of spawned the idea of pairing up two of Mattel's collector sort of flagship lines for the adult collector, and that being Masters of the Universe versus DC Universe Classics. Classics versus Classics. And we did quite a few packs. I'm going to actually cover all the packs in this video because, well, kind of breaking them up into an individual one, since they were, for the most part, repaints, probably can't do a full video, if you will, just on, Stratos versus Hawkman. But I think it's a good idea to kind of include all of them in one video, talk about why we did these packs, why they didn't continue, and in the end, some of the thoughts of actually what was planned for the next wave of packs, because we really hoped this was going to be a long-term thing. So we'll jump right in. That's the last of the retail ones was Supergirl versus Shira, which I know a lot of fans were questioning also why Teela wasn't in that, and that's Teela would have been matched up with Wonder Woman as opposed to Supergirl if that had continued, because they were both warriors, as opposed to, Shira being He-Man's sister and Supergirl being Superman's cousin, etc. So, anyway, I'm off on a tangent. And of course, we'll talk about the Comic-Con release, the infamous Battle Armor Skeletor Faker versus Bizarro, that actually kind of was an original variant in the line. But let's go back to the beginning of what kind of spawned all this, and that was the mini-comics. And it actually all started with the original mini-comics. There were 4 mini-comics that shipped with the original 82 line. They were more storybooks than comics, because it was a picture with words below or on the next page as opposed to word balloons. And they were all written by Don Glut, who is kind of a famous sci-fi writer and dinosaur lover. He wrote the novelization of The Empire Strikes Back. After these 4, Mattel turned to DC Comics. They already had a good relationship with DC. They had been developing a New Gods line with DC that kind of actually sort of morphed into Masters of the Universe in some interesting ways. Check out the video about that. But DC Comics helped not only create the next series of mini-comics that were packed in with the figures in kind of the 83 line, and this included some really, really important mini-comics like the Trapjaw, the Terror of Trapjaw, and the Tale of Teela, as well as the record book that came with the Talon Fighter. So these were all produced by DC Comics, and it wasn't just that DC was producing them, but Mattel actually asked DC, the writers, to kind of come up with more of the world, more storylines, more sort of flesh out what today would be called world building. I don't know if that term existed in 82, but that's what DC was asked to do, and they were really kind of given carte blanche. And they did this first in a series of one-shots that DC did. So first they had a single issue, and then that was also followed up by a kind of bonus comic inside of Action Comics, where Masters wasn't even on the cover, except for they had at sort of like the top left, there was a little swipe that told you that not only were you going to get Superman, but you were also going to get a free 16-page Masters of the Universe comic. So in these 2 comics, in the one-shot and in this Action Comics issue, this was when DC really fleshed out the world and added a lot of elements that had never been part of the brand before. And as I said, Mattel was very encouraging of this. They wanted the creative energy and passion of DC's writers to do this because they knew they had a hit on their hand and they needed a bigger world. And one of the things they created was King Randor. I mistakenly mentioned in the Randor Classics video that his first appearance was in one of the later mini-comics, but no, it was actually here, although he wasn't called King Randor at the time. He was just the King of Eternia. They also included some elements from the Don Glut mini-comics, such as Skeletor trying to get both halves of the Power Sword in order to combine them as a key to open Castle Grayskull. This is before the Power Sword was sort of He-Man's key. In fact, and they also introduced Prince Adam. Here he is, making his grand entrance with his girlfriends. And when he became He-Man, he didn't hold up the sword and say, by the power of Grayskull. So in order to turn Prince Adam, who this was his first appearance here, into He-Man, Prince Adam ran into a secret cave. And inside this cave, he would be filled with the magical energies and the magical powers and meet up with the goddess, and she would transform him into He-Man. So the sword at this point was still the key to get inside Castle Grayskull. It was not Adam's sword of power that invoked the magical change, transforming him into He-Man. So, which is also, why the original toys had those two swords that clipped together. Okay, so back to the story. So Soups here is flying around Earth, or at least the DC Earth, and this giant sort of tentacle monster pops out of the ocean and grabs onto him. And by, he gets sucked down into the water, battling this thing. And it's really not explained, but, hey, comics, does it really need to be? There's some kind of vortex under the ocean, and Superman flies into the vortex because, again, comic books. And outside of the vortex, suddenly he finds that he's not on Earth anymore, but he's on Eternia. Dun, dun, dun. This is actually the second time he's been to Eternia. He went there first in the one-shot. So now in this 16-page preview, he's here for a second time. So, he even recognizes, like, I've been here before. This is Eternia, because I'm Superman, and I remember everything. I think it's one of his powers, kind of like being able to throw his S-shield at enemies like he did in Superman 2. All right, so that was basically how they met up, and that was kind of the justification, or at least the starting point, for doing these 2-packs of pairing up Superman with He-Man. And that first pack literally, kind of brought that cover to life, that first crossover from the early 80s that, introduced so many elements that became core to the franchise over time. Now, one of the things that we wanted to do was at least make one of the figures in each pack different from the previous release for fans who were maybe already owned He-Man and were going to be buying him again. So in this case, He-Man was redecoed in his sort of comic book covers, and the same within the second pack, which was Skeletor versus Lex Luthor. Skeletor got a slight redeco in more of his comic book covers with a yellow face and different purple highlights on his armor. We kind of carried this through with the additional packs with gusto, I would say, because when it came time to doing the next set, which was Stratos versus Hawkman, well, now that we had a sort of a new series on our hand, we saw these packs as a vehicle to get out some fan-requested variants. In this case, Stratos with the blue wings, which was in the vintage line. They sometimes reversed the wing and the backpack color, So here was a chance to do the blue-winged Stratos. And again, the packs were great because they were a vehicle to do this. I think putting out blue-winged Stratos or, mini-comic colored Merman as a single release in Classics might not have worked, if you will, as a monthly release. But it was a perfect, again, vehicle, these packs being the vehicle to release these variants in because it made sense. They weren't part of the subscription, they weren't the monthly figures. I remember in particular the Aquaman versus Merman pack, Bill Beneke really wanted to give them both their tridents so that they could be crossing them in the packaging, like a trident versus trident battle. And I remember this is one of the few times Bill and I ever disagreed because I was really insistent that Merman have his sword because that was what he had in the mini-comic, was he just had his sword. He didn't have a trident, and I won that. Zodak got a bit of a mini-comic refresh as well, and Hal got, I think this was John Stewart's, originally his weapon, that now came with the Hal Jordan versus Zodak, because they were both kind of cosmic enforcers. Again, giving them a slight refresh. And then that kind of brings us to Battle Armor Faker. I almost said Skeletor again there. So this was the first sort of, or really the only kind of original variant that shipped in this collection, if you will. Giving Faker the battle armor from Skeletor and painting it in Faker orange. I do regret that we didn't make his base body with the lower torso, the flat torso, like the other battle armor figures and Hordak had. He had the regular skin, sort of ab torso under there, which it would have worked better had we given him the flat torso and painted it orange. I think, that was just missed. If we could go back, this would definitely be something I would have fixed. And this wound up being a really popular figure. It only got released at Comic-Con simply because the toy line at retail, this was a Toys R Us 2-pack line, the sales weren't what they needed to be. And that's why it got released at Comic-Con, because we had it fully developed. One of the other things we got to do was develop some really cool artwork. The original packs, the first series, used existing art, but after that, we were able to work with DC to create original art, which became sort of little posters that were inserted with all of the figures. I didn't really talk about Shira versus Supergirl that much. I think there was this was the one pack that there was almost no change to the figures from the original release, but we did get to do really cool new art for them. So all the figures after that. But as I said, sales just weren't what they were. They were sold at Toys R Us, but unfortunately they just did not meet sales expectations. We did have other packs planned, though, for the future. The next pack that was going to come out, and we actually did develop artwork for it, it actually got pretty far along in the process, was going to be Red Tornado, and we were going to be able to release the modern Red Tornado that was supposed to be a variant in DCU Classics Wave 1 that got nixed for various reasons. And we would have paired him with a non-redeco of Cyclone. So in this case, Red Tornado would have gotten the redeco. Cyclone would have remained the same, but it would have been a great, again, a vehicle to get out Red Tornado. I used vehicle a lot in this video that's about figures. And then finally we had a pack that was going to pair Man-at-Arms with Batman, because both of them were gadget guys. There was talk about if we should pair Batman with Hordak, because they were kind of both Bat-themed, but it really made sense that both Batman and Man-at-Arms, everything about them was like, creating gadgets to fight evil, and it made sense. And there's so many different variants of Batman to do. I don't remember which new outfit we were going to put him in, but he was going to be paired with Man-at-Arms in the next pack. But those two packs never got made. But, hey, we tried new things. It was all part of, making toys and seeing what works. And, we got out some really cool variants. It was a lot of fun to work on. It just didn't meet sales expectations. It's tough to, get a retail line out there without content. And that's a lot of reasons that Classics wasn't at retail, is there was no content to support it, like a movie or a TV show, and why it was really sold online. But, hey, we had fun. It was awesome. The two packs were, I think, beloved by the fans, and it would have been cool to do more. And speaking of more, if you'd like to see more videos like this, please be sure to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, list your comments. I try to respond to as many as I can. Love to hear what you guys think. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys around the internet.